Next up, we have Juliet Stevenson, and she will be reading a very powerful account of the first 190 days of the war by Oday El-Meghari.
Yes, Oday El-Meghari is the executive director of Wedad, which is a Palestinian civil society association based in Gaza that works to develop and rehabilitate the local community in the areas of community development, capacity building, and psychological and social rehabilitation. This is his story. For 190 days, I lived through a war that defies description. The horrors I witnessed are beyond words, and I would not wish this experience on anyone, not even on my worst enemies. I was in Gaza City when the initial calls for evacuation came and the airstrikes began. My family and I were lost, not knowing where to go. The airstrikes were brutal, their impact indescribable. The sounds of bombings were terrifying, leaving us in a state of shock and fear. In those early days, I believed the war would be over quickly. And surely it couldn't continue at this pace without wiping out everyone in Gaza. I was wrong. As the days wore on, basic necessities disappeared. We had no water, no electricity or fuel. Food became scarce, and within 20 days, I had lost over 20 kilos of my body weight. All crossings were closed, preventing food trucks from entering Gaza. Soon, the food in storage ran out. That was the hardest part, starvation. We survived on one meal a day. We ate beans and bread until the bread ran out, and then we ate grass from the streets. This went on for months. During Ramadan, we survived on dates and water. When canned food did begin to enter Gaza, it was scarce and expensive. A banana cost more than $60, sliced and sold for $20 a piece. Food distributions were often disrupted by bombings. The air-dropped food felt humiliating, like feeding chickens. Some people even died from the airdrops. Hospitals were either out of service or destroyed. My brother, a doctor, had to use apple cider, a disinfectant, and coffee powder to stop bleeding. Major surgeries were performed without anesthesia. Doctors often had to take the difficult decision of leaving those with slim chances of survival to die. Many of them were older people. My wife has cancer, and there was no medication whatsoever for her. Older people faced 4 major challenges: lack of medication, housing, nutrition, and safety. Many older people lost their homes due to the bombings and couldn't move to safer areas because of physical limitations. Some died during these forced movements or while trying to survive in makeshift shelters, exposed to the harsh cold of winter. Medications and vitamins, essential for old people, became scarce. This was devastating for those with chronic illnesses like diabetes, heart disease, arthritis, and other conditions that require constant medical attention and treatment. Without access to medication, many suffered immensely, and some died from quite preventable complications. The psychological toll was equally severe. Many older people had already endured a lifetime of hardship. Having been born in a tent in a refugee camp during the 1950s, it was a cruel twist of fate to see them end their lives decades later in another tent. The constant fear, lack of security, the sight of their community falling apart around them left deep psychological scars. Their trauma was exacerbated by the inability to protect and support their families, leading to feelings of helplessness and despair. Nutrition was another issue. Food shortages affected everyone, but older people couldn't queue for hours or fight for the limited food supplies, leaving them at a higher risk of malnutrition. As people fled to the southern regions of Gaza, overcrowding made these issues even worse. Areas designed for 90,000 people were suddenly home to more than 2 million. This extreme congestion made it nearly impossible for older people to move around, access services, or find a safe place to rest. Walking the streets meant navigating a sea of people, often stepping over those who had collapsed from exhaustion or injury. The lack of sanitation and piled-up garbage contributed to the spread of diseases. Without proper waste management, the environment became hazardous, further endangering the health of older people with weakened immune systems. My father, who has lived through 76 years of occupation, said he had never seen anything as bad as this. All previous wars combined equaled one day of this conflict.